and the swamp one, the forest one. What's in the water today? Jackie, there's got to be a lunar cycle going on that you know about that's in the water today because it's not just y'all. It's like everyone I came in contact with today has got the giggles or
I don't
something.
know. In New York, we're still dealing with the Canadian wildfires blowing smoke all up in this area again. It's just over and over again.
I haven't heard about the
Canadians.
wildfire in Canada since like July.
That's
Yeah,
So
because
I
yeah, all the smoke is getting blown
you
literally.
because you export your environmental damage to elsewhere.
Yeah, for
hey,
real.
we don't complain when we get your guys' wildfire smoke from California or that massive oil spill
Oh,
from Ohio.
yeah,
Can we
So
but
start
that's
tokenizing this type of weather? Can we start trading on the smoke exchange or something?
we do. It's called carbon credits. Hello.
Yeah, yeah,
no.
except
Like literally we put our societal sin in the form of like credits that can be traded. Like we're
yeah.
commodifying it. Okay, so the money episode, I guess, not that we're promising this, but I'm just curious about this because we were talking about this offline. And we don't have to go right for this. There's plenty of other news that we probably need to touch on, but like I'm super curious because what I'm observing, maybe this is good because we're in so many different parts of the world. Let me pose this as a question. I think I've said this to Jackie in off conversations, side conversations where we weren't talking shit about you. Um, but but the market is not showing any signs that it is going to collapse, but people are acting like it is. Have you guys experienced this where you're at?
Definitely
I
not in
haven't.
my circle. My
I
circle
haven't.
is
Yeah.
bullish.
Your circle's bullish.
Are you talking about like crypto markets? You're speaking specifically, or
No, I'm literally talking about general markets now. Like the
oh, okay.
general.
Interesting. Um, I've heard a little bit general markets. And I can tell you that around here the housing market is taking a bit of a hit. It's
Define a
not.
bit.
Um, there's been a lot of houses that have been sitting on the market since July. Like a number of market of houses that were originally maybe listed at somewhere around 350, 300, like somewhere between 300 and 400 Canadian $100,000, and they're now, some of them have now dropped their asking prices over $100,000 and have
Over a
been
hundred thousand.
over $100,000,
Really?
and they haven't, and as far as I know, still haven't picked up a buyer yet.
Now there's
Um,
something you could export to Buffalo Homes, right, Jackie? Like Buffalo Homes.
Yeah, I think our real estate market's still like going strong, but we're generally behind the curve. We generally are not affected in the housing market, whether they're up or down in other places. I don't exactly know why. Probably because we're just a generally poor city to begin with.
Mm,
I don't know.
interesting. Okay, so Aussie, that was like a hot take on real estate. The real estate market is softening. That's a significant softening. But what about other markets like I mean, I guess the real estate's the biggest one, but like market indicators. Like let's just start with market
Well, right
indicators.
now, like, and I know in the States, like everybody is defaulting on credit cards right now. Like they're like
That's an interesting stat.
banks are not getting payments on these credit cards right now. Everyone's just like, forget it.
Interesting. I wonder where we could pull. Is there a normal place and a regular place to pull those
Let's
stats?
see here.
I want to call out while we're going through this a couple things. Alejandro said hello. Hello,
Oh, sorry.
Alejandro. Nice to see you.
Let me pull
And
this
then
up.
George Pate said Monero over Bitcoin. And I just want to say Monero is an interesting thing because you can still mine it. And it is privacy, which when the world goes completely into digital currencies, I have a buddy who's very wealthy who thinks that Monero is going to thrive because the one thing the wealthy don't want is anyone else to know what they're doing. And then George Pate also said, only bullish on cannabis, water, and food, probably in that order. So I want to call that out.
Probably in that order.
Probably in that order. I want to call out that, Grant, I have not been feeling that sentiment as far as the markets. I do feel a lot here locally in Colombia. I've had a lot of candid conversations with people. I've shared some of them with you guys just about people's personal finances. I mean, I just think things have gotten so expensive between rent hikes and food hikes. over the last 6 to 18 months for a myriad of reasons, right? Inflation, currency devaluation, supply chain issues, other things being equal. So I have seen that more on the micro, but not as like a more macro sentiment. And it's not something that I've even been seeing on X. Not that we should use X at all to tell us, the temperature of climate
I
here.
don't know.
But it is also a place where people go and air their grievances. So I haven't felt that. But I want to ask you now the question, and then Jacki looks like she has some stats for us that she can share on the credit cards.
I'm about
Grant,
to post some of that.
Oh, you're going to post that? Great. What are you feeling, or what have you been seeing, or what are the things that you're from your circle that have been saying this? Because for a long time in the show, Aussie and I have been like, hey, things are hard out there. Hey, things aren't great. I feel like we've been more maybe on the pessimistic side or looking at different realities. And you've been like, oh, there's no problems. I see no problems. My small business community has no problems. So what are you seeing now that's maybe changing your tune?
So, well, and mind you, I'm drawing a very clear distinction between what I'm seeing and then what I'm hearing. And so my community, for those who might not know, I touch a lot of entrepreneurs. I encounter entrepreneurs. I just got off the phone with a gal who's buying an HVAC company, and we're talking about investment in that. And she has no experience whatsoever, but the SBA process to buy business was nutty easy. And so like you hear these things like the SBA is not tight at all. If you guys found a revenue generating business with no experience, you could go find up to $5 million. And the one guy I spoke to has got like, I've got 70 mil. Is it revenue generating? Well, let's actually find out. But if it is, why wouldn't we just give you the money, right? And so like to those sorts of indicators are what I'm saying, like the market seems strong. Yeah, crypto's in a little bit of like a 24-hour like sneeze down, but that's it. Like it's generally pretty strong right now. But the market, like credit card debt. So Jacki's posted this, and when I'm done with my diatribe, I'll post all that info, Jacki, on LinkedIn because it's good info. But I feel strong about the market. And like even with interest rates and home prices down here, Aussie, if home prices go down 10%, 15%, I'm going, it's softening the market. To hear you say, no, prices have gone down by 100K, that's a different ball game. So that's worth paying attention to. But maybe interest rates come down, but we don't think, especially maybe in Florida, we don't expect prices to go down. In fact, if anything, Marissa was saying one possible hypothesis is that when interest rates come down, you'll actually see prices bump a little bit because Gen Zs and millennials who feel like they've missed out on a window of like low rates because they're going to jack it all the way up, man. They're going to jump in even at these prices. So I feel like the market's generally strong. But what am I hearing? I talked to a ton of entrepreneurs, and nearly all of them are saying, I've had clients calling in, not paying their invoices. I've had a slowdown in cold calls. Hey, I need some work. I need some AC. I have a good friend, a good buddy of mine who runs a used car lot, and his family has done this for 30 years. This is an East Indian family who moved here. They've been here now 30 or 40 years as a family, and they've run a very successful used car lot. And he was sharing some of his numbers, which I won't share online, but it was challenging. And he was saying, have you noticed, Grant, drive around and notice how many cars are missing a bumper or a grill or a quarter panel that they didn't even claim insurance on it. They got into a fender bender. They said, forget it. And they didn't replace it, and they're not repairing it. And he's like, that's a sign that people's wallets are tightening up more than we would have expected. And so I could give several actual anecdotes and anonymize the conversations I've had where that's the case. People saying, I'm just not going to eat out much over the next few weeks like I was doing. And it's like, what is going on? So those are the sorts of conversations I'm having multiple times a day. That doesn't change my sentiment, but it makes me say this one statement. People are acting weird.
Well,
That's
I
what I'm
think
saying.
in
Go ahead,
one of those stats I put in, it said a third of Americans are hiding credit card debt. No one knows how much they owe. And I mean, credit card debt is so snaky because once you get behind on your payments, not only is your interest going up, but now you're getting late fees on top of that. I mean, you just drown. And then it goes through the collections process, all of that. But I mean, if people are behind on any of their bill, and then you got to start choosing, well, am I going to pay my light bill? Am I going to pay my auto insurance bill? Like, what bills am I going to actually pay this month? I mean, people are definitely in tough positions right now, for sure, at least up here in the States.
Yeah, there we go. So there's that quote, Jackie. I just shared it with the rest of the audience, and then here's the New York Post article about this credit card debt that you quoted here. Um, real quick, I don't want to overlook George Pate's comment. He said he has a piece of property in California valued at just over 5 mil. Real estate is definitely odd. Others aren't valued at the same due to their land simply being tied up in loans. So I think he's getting at properties of similar size that should be valued but have loans. So it's just acting weird. We're self-built with no investors. Hashtag cannabis. And then he says SBO goes hard. Boring businesses make moolah. Services is money. Go ahead.
So
Awesome.
I'm gonna hop in. I mean, SBA totally makes sense why they're willing to just dole out cash on anything that's cash flowing right now. You've got a ridiculous number of retirees in the US, baby boomers that own a massive portion of small businesses. And this is Cody Sanchez's whole thesis of buy boring businesses, because there's tons of people retiring and you can probably either owner finance or SBA loan them and start making cash flow right away. So that doesn't surprise me. I don't think SBA will necessarily tighten up anymore in the even in an economic downturn, other than, hey, is this actually cash flowing, or are these made up fictional figures? I don't really think that is a good read. I think the read on, hey, yeah, we're not having clients pay invoices right away, and look around the cars that are like, beat up. And I mean, I drove down to Vermont and I took a nice little camping vacation with my girlfriend this weekend, and where I was, I mean, people were still spending money galore, but I was also staying in a resort town. I was camping for dirt cheap, but I was staying in a resort town, and where most people were paying like $500 a night for a hotel room. But how many of those people were doing it on a credit card, or are hiding other credit card debt, or they're just upper middle class, and so they can afford to do that, and they're not maybe feeling the penny pinch that the lower middle class and those around the poverty line are feeling.
Sentiment in Bogota, Jarrett, like, just public sentiment.
I mean, I think things in Colombia are tough regardless. 70% of people work in the informal economy, which leads to financial insecurity, right? If you're a taxi driver, if you're a delivery person, there's a lot of people. There's thousands of people that are in that. I was actually, before we recorded, I was talking to my doorman, because talking to doormen is fascinating, because these are people who see everything, but most people just don't engage with them. And we were talking, and I was asking about what he used to do before this. And before this, he was like, "Oh, I used to walk around selling mops and brooms in the street."
Yes.
And I'm like, "Dude, that's tough work, man." He's like, yeah, it was brutal. And I'm like, geez. And now he's doing this. And actually, I wanted to share with you guys a conversation. I'm glad we have it on mic here. I go to a local restaurant here, and many of the waiters are from Venezuela. And I was talking to this guy, and he had lived in North Carolina for a couple of years, because he's like, "Oh yeah, back in the day, the US would give us visas for days because they knew we weren't going to stay because we had everything going on in Venezuela." And he was saying that, he said, he's like, "I'm sick and tired of all these Latinos trying to go to the US because they don't understand actually what's going on there and how difficult it actually is to live there." And I was like, "Dude, you're preaching to the choir. Like, I get it. I'm here because I feel like my life is better." And he was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Look at me. I'm a waiter, and I make enough money to afford a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment for myself." He's like, "Unless I'm working at a top restaurant in New York City, it's going to be hard for me to make ends meet in many places of the United States where I would want to be and I would feel comfortable." And then we talked about the difference between a developed country and a rich country. And that was an interesting one. And his ideas there were basically just that, like, just because there's wealth in the United States, we talked about wealth concentration, right? And he's like, "No, I have a better quality standard of life here than I would if I were in the United States." And he was talking to me about his family. He has family in Europe somewhere, I believe in Germany, and how worried they are for this upcoming winter now, because they know the energy prices are still going to be through the roof. Putin's still not turning on the gas, and Putin knows that he owns, I think, like 50% of Germany's gas comes from there. And then so if Germany wants to turn around and go and buy it from us, it has a premium because you have to get it across the ocean and the pipelines aren't set up. So anyways, it was a very interesting conversation about money, perception of lifestyle, and kind of how the two play within one another. And this is somebody who has come from a country who has seen some of the worst currency devaluation we've ever seen in modern history, who's now here like, no, he's like, I could go to the States. Many people go to the States, but he's like, I would rather be here because my quality of life is better here doing this same work. He's like, I would have to work 2 times as hard in the United States to achieve the same like comfort and quality of what I have right now. And I just thought that was a good thing to hear, because I do think that, especially for many people in the world, they think the United States is the savior. And I will say, we did talk about that the opportunity in the United States, when given the chance, does have almost like no ceiling, right? Like over a long enough period of time, if you work hard enough, 110%. He knows that. And we talked about, if you open up a store here and you kill it for 20 years, you may not be any better because the currency is going to devalue, right? But if you open up a store in the United States, you do that same amount of proof of work, that it may be just a little bit better. And the reason why I share this today is because today I just went and I sat, and his name's Danny, and we were talking. He said, hey, I need you to teach me more about Bitcoin. That's what he said. And I was like, oh. I was like, okay, you don't have to ask twice, good sir. So we're gonna line something, and I
with a good time.
Yeah, God, put some hook on a meat, right? So, anyways, that was a fruitful conversation, and it was good to kind of have those perspectives. But all of that is to say that it's also tough for me to tell how people are doing, because here people do have decent access to credit, and so you can't always tell. I know this guy, he I think financial literacy here is really, really low. And at the same time, you have to, in Latin society, you always have to look good at all times. Oof. If you ever go to a mall and you can tell a Latino because their shoes look like they're brand new. And so you have this culture where you have to stunt, and things are hard, and financial literacy is low. I do think a lot of people are struggling with debt. And I told you guys a story off mic. I told it actually at the end of the last episode about someone who got in predatory lending with 9% daily interest. And that does happen. And a lot of times it's off the books. And it's like, if you don't pay, guess what? We're going to come over to the house and, we're going to take some liberties. So those things do happen. And it's horrible, but,
So this leads us into the money episode. We took a sentiment and a kind of a beat on what's going on around the world. And that has leveled off some of the edges of what I'm hearing from Jacki going, things are pretty steady Eddie here, but we're already kind of as a city, our average is a little bit lower than the rest of the country. And then Jarrett being in Bogota, that's pretty good. Let's ask some real questions about money. What are y'all's philosophy about emergency funds? Ooh. Or your system?
Jacki, what do you got?
I'm so afraid to talk right now. Do I sound okay?
You sound great.
You sound great.
I didn't realize I didn't have my USB mic on, so I just switched over to this, and I was terrified that I was gonna be so loud and the crackling
No, you sound great.
Should people have emergency funds or not?
No, we're talking about ourselves, what works for us or what will need to work for us. So what's your desired system or your philosophy on emergency funds? How much months do you think you need? How are you going to start allocating? If someone was starting from zero emergency fund, how should they handle it? Go ahead.
I feel like I want as much of an emergency fund as possible.
All of it.
I live very frugally. I live very minimalist. I have for 4 or 5 years now. I think it's worth it for everyone to go through a period of just purging and, go down to nothing and then figure out what you can afford. I think I see way too many people waiting until they don't have enough to start canceling the subscriptions. And we talked about that last show. And this was actually, I think this conversation is maybe spawning from our WhatsApp convo. Yes. Where I was just saying a little, I prefer to take cash out still. This is I'm going to sound like I am 854 years old.
Yes.
But yeah, I like to take $100 out, and that's what I have to spend for the week on just random things like running to the drugstore. Or if you were a female, you would know that the drugstore is what kills us. We go in for mascara and we spend $60 to $70 at Walgreens. I don't know how it happens, but it happens to all of us. So like physically having $100 and like seeing the 20 go and seeing that there's only two $20 bills left now, like I need that, but I also connect this to being a visual learner. So like to me, that's just like I need these visuals. Maybe don't need them. I mean, I could babysit numbers on a screen, and the apps make it really easy to see your percent of the pie that you're spending at restaurants and blah 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 blah. But honestly, like those stats mean nothing when you've already made the mistakes.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Aussie, what's a philosophy on emergency funds?
Currently, I'm sitting on just shy of 6 months of emergency funds. I like to try and sit on about that. Jarrett and I know Jarrett will probably disagree with me because he has a very different philosophy, and we've already had that discussion before. At the same time, I might use that at least a portion of those emergency funds on a down payment, and the 6 months was because up until recently I didn't have stable employment. I was jumping every 3 months from contract to contractor, every 6 months from contract to contract. And so this is definitely a different move. And now that I've gotten that stable employment and I have a regular paycheck coming in, guaranteed, I don't necessarily move with that. Okay, I'm gonna shout out Tristan's comment that getting David Ramsey energy on today. I actually am totally an opposite philosophically to what we're talking. Like, if we think about David Ramsey and no debt, that is not at all how I'm actually approaching a lot of this bull market and my moves into the next 2-3 years. You can use debt to your advantage. Grant has taught me this, and I've learned this from a lot of other people. And so
I don't know if I advised going into debt to buy crypto ever, but reading between the lines, like that's what it sounds like.
Well, you did get him into Time Wonderland. I mean,
yeah. So
Yeah, Grant, if on this screen you were the only dealer, okay, buddy.
Oh, true story.
This is a really important conversation, though, with how comfortable people are carrying debt.
Yes.
Me personally, I hate it. I don't like the feeling of it. And I have listened to lots of different money experts talk about getting comfortable with carrying debt. And, you just take the debt out and then you believe in yourself and you just know the returns are going to come and, manifest it. Just visualize it. Like it's all good. Yeah, I don't know. I think that happens for
words.
Yeah, I think that happens for like a very elite group of people that it's manifested because they usually have some type of safety net out there.
Shout out James Wong. Debt's fine if it's serviceable. And this is where I'll chime in. I have a good amount of debt.
Definition of terms.
Yeah, I mean, I have a good amount of debt and I'm fine with it because it's there. It's going to be there. I'm fine with it. And
well, define the term though. Like, what does serviceable mean? Because Dr. James, I might agree with you, but what is the definition of serviceable?
He'll chime in. James will chime in. So James came on More Than Blockchain. He is a Bitcoin startup using Bitcoin Lightning to give people back rebates when they buy prescription drugs. He basically is going at GoodRx because they are basically taking a lot more of the pie as they should. So you give a price and you give me the terms. Nice. James coming with the fire. He's coming with the fire.
See, I told you, everyone's got sauciness today. Aussie.
I'm 100%. If debt is serviceable, then which just means I can look at my my monthly budget and see that I can make that payment without negatively impacting my day-to-day costs, my carrying costs, my living costs. Debt can negatively impact my investing costs if that debt is actually helping my investing journey. So leveraging debt to essentially be able to invest earlier, a larger sum earlier, is one way that I do see leveraging debt. if I think the returns can outpace what the cost to carry that debt is.
So you just dropped a big freaking if, right? Like, say that if one more time, because humans watching this for posterity need to hear the asterisk, right? So, like, if what?
If the cost of carrying the debt is less than the potential returns, and that the potential returns are something A, that you understand, and B, that there's at least some traceability to that you can account for. So for example, Bitcoin has cycles. And I know enough about Bitcoin and Ethereum cycles to understand to make reasonable projections and reasonable estimates on a debt to ratio and a debt basis. Like, I could see if I can get a loan even at 15%, depending on the amount, and have that and be able to put that into Bitcoin right now, knowing when I know where we are in the cycle, where the previous cycle returns have put us, even taking into consideration diminishing returns, then and see that the cost to carry that debt doesn't outweigh the potential returns, then and I can service the debt in the meantime. Then
So,
that's
because
important.
no one has successfully defined the term serviceable, I will. Jesus Christ.
I was waiting for this. Go for it, Grant.
All that
Grant
serviceable.
did not like Aussie's TEDx. Aussie
I
just
know.
spoke
I
for
love
20
the
minutes.
TEDx,
And Grant
but
said,
it
yeah,
belongs.
whatever.
I loved his TEDx, but it belongs in a different spot, and this is why. Because serviceable is the key word here. Serviceable means that I am taking other people's money and I can pay my monthly payment on it. Like that's what it means. I can pay this down. And then also you did add the thing I did love, and that is are the potential returns going to outpace this? Now, that right there is the leap to fantasy that too many borrowers in America are making, because they think I'll take a risk. Entrepreneurs are the opposite of risk takers. They might do things that jar people, but generally entrepreneurs are risk averse, which is why they make the decisions they make. And we've talked a lot about risk. My definition of risk is proportionate to the risk taker, and it's the unknowns. There's Victor. So if
What's up, Victor?
risk is the distance between what I'm doing and what I know about what I'm doing, and am I fooling myself? And so, Jacki, let me ask this, because you have the most emphatic anti-debt position, but you actually are more educated, I'd say, than the boys here.
Definitely all of us combined. I'll grant you're in there too.
I am. I know. I'm including myself. And so, from that regard, Jacki, you're very well informed about debt. Why aren't you comfortable with debt?
Because I never want to be owned by someone or something else ever. I just want to float through life.
So the unknown for you is at any moment, the debt instrument technically is controlled by somebody else. I'd agree with that. Most debt, like if anyone go look at my tweet that I just did about PNC Bank really messing with my debt. And I don't know if you guys saw this, Jack. You might not have seen this. But it's, to me, I'm a big real estate maxi, and like we're in control of nearly every component. Emphasis on nearly, because there's these odd moments that I have had in the last month or so. I don't even know how long it's been going on now, where someone else in control of one of the elements got screwy, and suddenly my payment went from $1,200 to $1,700. And that's a real change. Go ahead, Jacki.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, so I would pose this question to Tristan as well. Is he talking about people that already have their emergency savings set up? Because if you don't have your emergency savings, I would say taking out debt with the hopes that you can get that squared away plus some. If you don't even have an emergency savings, and I'm not being mean to anybody, but there's probably a fundamental budgeting issue to begin with, that if you don't get that under control, it doesn't matter how much money you get on these returns or what you get given to you, because you still aren't a good steward of it. And that's even a lesson I had to learn. I mean, that's not a knock at anybody. Yeah, I'm going to agree with Allison on this a little bit too, that the risk on entrepreneurs, and maybe there's a lot of wantrepreneurs and then there's actual entrepreneurs, but I do see a lot of people that think they're going to go solo or do a business or whatever. They'll spend tons of money on lots of things that they think are going to definitely have a return, and then they don't. So,
yeah, well, my definition of risk, Aussie, I'll hand you this mic real quick. My definition of risk, reminding, is the difference between the risk I am taking and my knowledge about it. And I think when I say most entrepreneurs are risk avoidant, I don't mean they're skilled. I don't mean they're accurate. I mean they look at the modern W-2 system as a massive risk that they are not in control of. Now, I'm not...
what
so to
are you?
Yes,
Let him go.
Grant
Let
has
him,
a
let,
very, very,
let him,
very
let him cook.
specific.
I like this. Let him cook. Let him cook.
Because when someone goes through life and says there's no social contract, there's no guarantee at the end, am I great at that hot dog stand? Am I great at that hot dog stand? I don't know. This gal I talked to today, am I going to succeed at managing this HVAC company? I don't know. But what I guarantee I am not in control of is my retirement. And when I become an entrepreneur, I'll have to figure a bunch of stuff out, but that's less risky because I'm taking control and I'm getting agency back. I might be screwy. It might be hard. It might absolutely suck. I might have to figure out taxes. But what it does is it flips the victim mind and says, you know what? I'm either going to be at the whim of wins and sees in politics between now and when I retire and hope that maybe there's no social contract, but maybe I get lucky with my Vanguard 500 index fund. And it's like, I don't even know. Entrepreneurs come along and go, that's risky. So I'll rather do this other thing that I have no idea about than spend 25 years to go, I guarantee I don't know what's on the other end of that. That's where I come from. Aussie, sorry.
Okay, no. I listened to your TEDx and I liked your TEDx. A round of applause for the Grant.
Jack, and you got to hand the mic to Jackie after. Go ahead.
Wait, I can't tell if that was a sarcastic golf clap from Aussie.
But I will say this: that's a very different definition and approach to risk and mindset than I would say a lot of people right now. The average retail user that Tristan kind of mentions in the comments, average retail investor, that's a very different mindset towards risk than they're thinking about.
Correct.
And actually how a lot of them would approach entrepreneurship. I think entrepreneurs is maybe a great term, and I think Allison is totally right. I think that there's a lot of entrepreneurs that take a lot of risks in terms of they could easily go bankrupt because their spending is outpacing their living, or do you know what, they're working 24 hours a day, their marriage is crumbling, or they're working 18 hours a day and their marriage is crumbling because they're working so hard on this that they're and everything's riding on this that they're risking every other aspect of their life. And so I would counter what you're saying a little bit and just kind of there is other risks other than not knowing how the S&P 500 is going to perform. Because I've also met some entrepreneurs who, their business was great for 15 years. And then 15 years in, either their business partner screwed them over, the market totally pivoted and they were not agile enough. They were too old to be able to kind of make the pivot with the market. So let's go.
Jackie, I agree with that. Jackie, please.
Jackie, go.
Gosh, every time it comes back to me, I lose. Oh, the funniest thing I've learned in my life about people that don't want to follow rules is they leave them and then they go, oh, that's why that rule was made. Oh, that's why that rule was made. And I see this happening a lot in crypto. There's so many people that, we're going to fuck this. We're going to do this revolution. And I feel y'all's heart. I have that heart. I share that heart. But Grant, I think what you're speaking to when you're saying like these people that are so sure that the W-2 system does not apply to them, when did they learn that? They learned that after leaving it and then trying to do it on their own. Some succeed, some don't. But I don't think our country does a good job. We talked about financial literacy. I don't think we do a good job, informing everybody what the rules of the game are to begin with. So you don't develop what you're talking about until you've actually left and gone through it.
I want
to go ahead, Jarrett, please.
Yeah, I want to hop in here. First of all, shout out Jack Snell. Jack,
Snell.
good to see you. It's good to see some of the OGs in the chat today. Allison, I think too what there's like, this is me looking at this from like a third party, but I think that there's two things here that maybe we're talking about. Maybe we're talking about them at the same time. One of them is whether or not entrepreneurship is a greater risk than getting a job. Like that's foremost, and that's what Grant is saying. Grant is saying one of them has, if it's not 100% certain, then it's riskier than the 100% certainty of me putting in my sweat equity into the business I'm going to build. And then on top of that, as Allison said, and I think most people would agree with her on some level, which is like, my experience is that they're high on risk. They're more willing to take risk than other people. And then I think what she's saying that is once we've gotten over whether the W-2 or the W-2 or entrepreneurship is more risky, maybe she's saying in the realm of entrepreneurship, there are more risks taken. And with that said, I will say that is 100% at least been my experience as far as the perception of risk. I think the other thing, and this is kind of what comes back to what Grant was saying about the job or the W-2, is just the overall perception of risk, right? I have all of my money in the blockchain-backed ecosystem, all of it. I keep
total risk,
stocks, nothing in real estate, and everyone will look at me, not everyone, but like many of my friends who know nothing about this world, and that's fine. They look at me and they think I'm crazy, right? And they're like, that's wild. I can't believe you're doing that. But that's their perception of risk. And it goes back to what Grant was talking about. Grant, can you define risk again? Because it has to do with the individual, first of all, because everyone has a different risk profile. And then it has to do with a layering of knowledge. Is that right?
Yeah. Risk, in my definition, and most entrepreneurs I talk to, is the distance between the perceived risk I'm taking and my depth of knowledge about it.
Well, isn't that just belief?
No. Knowledge, fact, experience. For example, the 15-year example Aussie just gave, which I really do appreciate. How many entrepreneurs are out of business in 2 years and 4 years? The marks are 2 years, 4 years, 7 years, and 15. Those are big milestones for entrepreneurs. Here's the thing. I know for a fact, statistically, the business I run will be out of business by year 15. But the other thing I know for fact by experience is the skill set I have developed is the real thing. The skill set of being able to sell anything, perceived market value. It's not even, hopefully it's about the business and that it wins, but I win in entrepreneurship even though the entity might not, because I also learned something about debt. I learned something about how to manage bankruptcies. Tristan had a great point, because the way we utilize debt versus your retail investors are very different perspectives. The way entrepreneurs perceive debt is literally diametrically different than Dave Ramsey. I like Dave Ramsey's advice. It is very right for low financially literate people. But for entrepreneurs, it's like, no, this is a weapon I can use in certain ways. Well, Grant, what if something goes wrong? That's not the risk. I know something's going to go wrong. It's my skill to take it and transmute that. And so go ahead, Jarrett, you had a thought there.
No, keep going. I'm giving you kudos. I just don't know how to do that without not stopping.
Yeah. And so for me, when an entrepreneur, and Jacki, I did want to.
That's how an entrepreneur claps.
Yeah.
Because it also looks like money. Yeah. But Jacki, you did make a great point. Like, some of this ideology is something I sensed first and learned and had words for by experience after. And I do think that does need to get called out.
Well,
because
also, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, also, I mean, when you were talking about an entrepreneur is generally taking away shared risk. So they're taking more risk on as an individual, as opposed to being a part of like a company that, risk is shared over different decision holders and makers and things like that. So, I mean, I guess I would go back to too, like, whether you get your paycheck from a company or whether you get that, selling, having a small business, whatever, you can still choose to do whatever you want to do with your money. And the beauty of blockchain and crypto is that we are decentralizing the investment process. So you can still work a regular job and have that, if assets equal liability plus stockholders equity. As an individual, you can start incorporating stockholder equity into your own life just with the wages you're getting from your regular job. So, I mean, I think
I agree.
and
That's a
especially
very
every
advanced paradigm though. Like you
Mm.
literally just described, like I could enter back into the W-2 world now and I would murder because the system you just described, but it's a pretty advanced paradigm that most people who live their full life in the W-2 paradigm, they view, like Allison said, I see them taking risks. Remember, I have a different definition of risk. And when you say, well, they're taking that risk on individually versus shared, no, you just chose a new paradigm of risk. We're not having that conversation. We're having a different conversation. And so when you do say that, I do agree with that statement. I do agree with the statement, but I'd have to shift paradigms and go, no. The definition of risk is making a leap on buying this or making a leap on
oh my
selling
God.
that. What?
Dude, Grant, I'm sorry. You're making the best points, but Victor just did a stand up and shut down the Apollo Theater. You have to share. You have to share his comment. He says, and I have to read this out because we're on Spotify. You
Amen.
can have your regular job and use an AI bot
To
trade
Jackie's
for you.
to Jackie's point,
To
absolutely.
Jackie's point. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Tristan says, let her cook.
Because what comes along with entrepreneurship, and I'm not saying it's not worth it. I mean, for 4 years I was out on my own. But I mean, if you've got kids, this is going to be a different situation. If you're a mother, if you're a female, it's gonna be a different situation. If you're in a marginalized group, this is going to be a different situation for you as an entrepreneur. So I mean, the risk you're taking with different factors associated, that also plays a big part in what you can achieve and know you can do. And there's other forces at play other than just like doing it.
Yeah,
I feel that
that's
wasn't
true.
super articulate, but
No, that was great. No, I agree with that. I got nothing to come against that.
Jackie, that was more articulate than my entire TEDx. So
Aussie hasn't spoke since
Let her
because he's just
cook.
trying to collect himself. I'm gonna throw a grenade in the bunker because why not? I don't have an emergency fund really. I probably have like what would be maybe like a month or two, but that's just because I like to have cash on hand for an opportunity. But in my like adult life, I've never benefited from having it. And I had someone explaining it to me similar to the ways that Grant just kind of talked about risk and like certainty and like we really need to like refocus on this. And it's like, am I expecting to be out of cash flow for 6 months? No. Could it happen? 110%. But in my life, when I've lost a job or like I've had many businesses that have not worked, and I'll be the first one to say it, I just had to hustle harder to get right back on the horse. I had no time to sit around and be like, well, I got 6 months. Let me go down to Mexico and screw around. I'll extend it to 9 months. I'll be good. I know how to, and I can also live on nothing. And when I say that, people like don't believe me, but I can probably live in this world if I chose to on probably around $250 to $400 a month, because I can live in Latin America and I can go out to the middle of nowhere that still has good Wi-Fi and I can live off beans and rice because I've done it for years. So I think that for me, not having a savings account just shortens the time when I do find myself without a job or without a cash flow to just get back on the horse quicker. And in my life, having like a comfortable couch is not a good thing. I don't want any like that type of like soft environment around me. So when I have lost jobs, I just pick up and I have to move that much quicker to find the next thing. And that's allowed me to also shorten the distance between idea and execution, which I think is huge for anyone trying to do anything in entrepreneurial stuff. I am going to read out.
Wait. Before you read Jack's like Declaration of Independence, I just want to speak to this real quick because I haven't answered, but I wanted to lift your comment up a little bit.
Sure.
We used to have a 6-month emergency fund, but that was when we were far more brokey. And not that we haven't lost money, gained money. Things are tight right now with how real estate's going, so I don't want to pretend that I'm high on the hog at all. Like you guys kind of know where I'm at financially. I won't say totally publicly, but we're not high on the hog in any way. But we've now gained confidence, and this is the entrepreneur skill I'm talking about, that to your point, the chances, the probability that I am out of work in the worst case scenario for 6 months is so low that money is now being eaten by rats in the warehouse, so to speak. And so I've shrunk our window to 2 to 3 months of emergency fund. And now we're deploying, once that rain barrel is full, then the next rain barrel of investment starts to fill up, if that makes any sense. So I wanted just to call it out because I didn't contribute to that thought, but I wanted to affirm that I kind of in that same spot. The higher skilled I get, the narrower I feel, the narrower I can make my emergency fund.
So I'm going to hop in on, just because I think what Jarrett said is about being able to get back on your horse. And I feel like that's what a lot of our viewers in the comments are echoing. I'm sitting on 6 months right now, and I'm probably going to deploy most of that in a real estate purchase soon. But after that, I'm planning to I'm actually probably sitting on closer to 7 months. I keep 7 to 8 months of emergency funds right now, but I will probably bring that to 2 to 3. I'll rebuild it a little bit to 2 to 3 months after this purchase, but I see it as actually being more risky to keep it sitting there, and especially in the market where it is right now and the position of the market that we're at. And I think being able to deploy as much capital, and why I think debt risk, and Jarrett is probably waiting for my spreadsheet on a conversation we've had behind the scenes about using debt and how he doesn't necessarily support my real estate move. He was literally saying you should maybe wait 3 months on that. But let's see what happens. And I'm gonna potentially use that move to actually create debt that will help me buy more Bitcoin in the future.
Tristan's like, okay, money bags, let's go. Okay, Jarrett, let's hand you the mic on this Jack Snell post, which will not fit in our screen in the least. So go for it.
Yeah, and before I hit up this Jack Snell comment, I want to say Kyle Butler said, "Burn the boats, bro." Tristan Peters said, "Being broke is the greatest motivator." And I just think, Grant, I want to echo what you said. I now feel confident enough in my skills that were I to be unemployed or without something, I would figure out something very, very quickly to just keep the ball moving forward and, figure out how to cover my cost of living. And I think that, especially with the market the way it is, people should be thinking less about an emergency, like less about the rainy day, and focus on the sunshine that is today, and be grateful for that as far as the prices we're at for what we all probably assume could happen over the next 24 months. Now, before I go into Jack Snell's soliloquy, please make sure you get water. If you need to get up and go to the bathroom, now is the time. This is long, and I love it. This may actually be the longest comment we've ever gotten on Not Crypto Bros. So Jack Snell,
bring it.
We're sending you a medal of an NFT medal. Jackie will work on that.
For episode 99.
Literally.
Of Not Crypto
It says, most engaged viewer.
He says, it depends how you look at it. Some entrepreneurs see it as a high risk to go work for someone else, doing repetitive tasks they may not want to do. Entrepreneurship is a risk, especially short term, but entrepreneurs often see not trying as the saddest possible outcome, not chasing after your dreams or not fulfilling the potential they know they can. Entrepreneurship is a risk, but for many, working for someone else is a guaranteed path to misery. I love y'all's points. It does not have to be either or. You can make an income working for someone else while bootstrapping and growing your business over time until you are ready to go full-time into your business. You can't be reckless with it. You must be financially stable to start and grow a stable business. I love this because this is what I think most people in Web3 and crypto are doing. I have a full-time business. I have a full-time job right now with Bitcoin, as everyone knows, but I'm building more than blockchain. I'm here trying to build as we are actively building, Not Crypto Bros, getting both of those platforms ready for the bull market when, insert moon emoji, right? Everyone on this call, Grant, Jackie and Aussie also are doing something similar, building a brand, part of other projects, positioning ourselves for 2024, the halving for 2025. So, in the end of the day, if I were to get laid off or fired, I know that there's something else that I can continue to put energy in and grow, which is exciting. So, Jack, I love your comment. And now I'm going to pass the mic to Jackie, who is ready.
I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off.
No.
Again,
we're going to the moon.
I spent 4 years consulting, working for different people, all this stuff. So I don't want to say I was an entrepreneur. I didn't own like multiple businesses or anything like that. However, and I say this with love, entrepreneurship is an incredibly selfish path. And I'm not bastardizing being selfish. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. It's just if you have people that depend on you, then they have to be prepared for the path you're taking. You will lose them along the way. And
Yes.
entrepreneurs are very open about this. I
Yes.
do think there's an over glamorization of the entrepreneur path, especially on social platforms. There are people out there telling you that they've got it all figured out, but you need to buy their coaching program in order for you to get that secret. But I don't think they'd have to sell you the coaching program if they were actually maybe doing that well. So I think there's a large misconception of how easy it is to make money or do these things in the environment that we have right now. So I guess like you guys know me, like I'm very into slow movements and being very, mindful about things. And so I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with this. I'm just offering a different perspective that there are people that don't consider, going to work for someone else more risky because it might provide them more peace of mind. And I just don't think there's any reason to be like mad at that or call it like victimhood or no. I'm not like saying anyone is. I just think, again, I mean, I follow probably more men online than women. It just kind of happened that way. Grant's new course next Tuesday.
All right. For everyone in the Spotify who didn't just get their mics blasted out by you three, the comment is Grant's new course drops next Tuesday at 10:30. It also doesn't say AM or PM, so I assume he'll be on at both hours. And entry price is $89.99 a month.
This is going to happen just for the memes. Yeah, Jacki. So everyone thinks that when someone purports their position, they are demonizing the other position.
No, they don't. I don't think everyone thinks that.
Well, I know, but I just want to, like, when we talk about risk in the entrepreneur assessed that for themselves, and they said this. Yeah, but not
in a bad way, though. Not in a bad way.
But your definition of selfishness is someone in this case who's looking out for themselves, and you just said someone who stays in a W-2 job, they're doing it because they see more security, which sounds like a pretty selfish way to act. My point is that it's all selfishness.
How is security? Okay.
That's what an entrepreneur is seeking. An entrepreneur, when they go into entrepreneurship, they saw a risk and they said, I need to create security in my life. They just followed the same logic.
So I think there's different, we're talking about security in two different ways. You can talk about security. Grant, you're saying that security as
I did not leave corporate thinking I was going to be more secure not being in a corporate environment.
So
that might be true. Go ahead, Aussie.
So I think that's the thing, is there's a dichotomy of thinking, and there are people who see entrepreneurship, who are entrepreneurs, who think that being an entrepreneur is more risky, but they do see other benefits, and that's where Jacki calls it selfish. She's like, certain things might feel good for yourself, but aren't necessarily more secure and good for the people around you. Whereas you're saying, as an entrepreneur, you see working a W-2 is more risky and therefore less secure.
And what is security? Remember, most entrepreneurs I know are not money focused. They're control focused. And what security seeking for them in their wiring is, I don't care if this thing goes underground. I care that I was in control at the helm. And so, like,
possibly the detriment of my family and the other people around me. I mean,
you forewarn everyone, but people who work
do people? I mean, I know lots of marriages that have done broke up over entrepreneurship, and
I know lots of marriages that were breaking up while they were in their W-2.
Well, sure, but I'm just saying, I don't think entrepreneurship is. I don't think a lot of people get forewarned when someone's, and I don't think it's always premeditated that you are going to go the entrepreneur route either. I mean, sometimes people leave corporate because they just got fed up with corporate. I mean, they just got fed up doing what they were doing. I mean, that was literally what happened to me. Entrepreneurship was the last thing I wanted to do. It was just the only option I had at the time.
Yeah. Well, and any symptom, any negative symptom of an entrepreneurship, when I made the decision for entrepreneurship, all the symptoms were the same. What's the divorce rate? People working jobs. What's the divorce rate of people becoming entrepreneurs at this point or later? What's the financial? Look it
I
up.
gotta know.
Look it up. I mean, it's pretty high, but like, let's just say people aren't divorced and they're just miserably unhappy. And it's like when you start doing the zero-sum game of like, wait, like in this path, W-2 path, I have almost no guaranteed retirement. But in this path, I'm at least in control and I might have a chance.
Yeah, but Grant, do you necessarily have a guaranteed retirement as someone working as an entrepreneur? Because you don't.
But you got to hear the words I just said. I at least have a chance. That's literally the word. It's no guarantee.
I have a chance. I have a chance with an S&P 500, or I've got a
Canadians. Canadians working for the Canadian government, maybe.
I've got a defined benefit plan pension that'll pay me 70% of my salary indexed to inflation from the day I retire at 60 to the day I die.
A coveted government job. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Aussie. All right. You are like one of 17 billion on the planet. Thank you. But the thing I think Grant is saying is that it's about control. And maybe he has less of a chance perceived, Aussie, than maybe you do to retire. But what he's saying is he's 110% in control of that, of whether that happens or not. And for many people, well, actually, I actually want to go back and say a couple things. One, I think a lot of these retirement conversations that we're having, we're taking into account maybe what our parents and our grandparents did. And I think today we need to think differently, right? Like today in the United States, millennials aren't going to see Social Security, yet we pay into it. Today in the United States, I don't think 401k is going to outpace inflation even when you retire. Today, most people don't have a pension plan, and that's the tripod of how people retire, right? So the other thing is, I think the conversation around risk in jobs and like whether you should be a W-2 or an entrepreneur is changing so much more rapidly than probably the way we're framing these conversations because of AI, right? Yeah. AI is here and it's going to change the way we understand labor and we understand inputs and outputs. And so I definitely think there is like probably a moment where people are just going to be like, oh, I'd be way better off just building something in my house using AI and getting paid whatever amount of money. We've got a bunch of comments. I'm going to tap into some of them. Tristan said the skills lends itself to the possibility, but again, it comes back to control, as we were saying. Victor says, I'll go back to our education. For example, the steps my son is doing now at 17, joining the Army. By 37 years old, he'll be retired and ready to enter civilian life as an entrepreneur. That's awesome. Tristan Peter says, my grandpa could buy a house for 2 raspberries and a penny. Got to shift the thinking. And I totally believe that. Like when Dave Ramsey, a lot of the advice he gives and any people, even just in like financial planners these days, I think we're still thinking about that the future is going to be like the past. And I just don't think that's the case. This is why I don't perceive it to be a risk to have my money where it is, all in Bitcoin and crypto. Like it doesn't feel like a risk, but the old paradigm would be like, no, that's what you need to do. And there are many people in Massachusetts, in the towns where I come from, that are 60 to 80 and they don't know what they're going to do because they're going to stop working soon, but the taxes on their house, the cost of their food is going to be way more than the amount of money they've put in their 401k or their retirement or whatever their pension plan is, even in 10 years, and they know it. Yeah. But then what are they going to do? They're going to sell their home? They can't move anywhere locally because no one's moving because they can't move locally, right? And like no one's moving because they can't move down the street.
That's literally everything I've seen on Reddit and most of the posts that I'm seeing on Reddit right now on personal finance are people like, hey, my dad wants to retire. He's got next to no savings, or they've got barely any savings. They want to stay in their house, and
they can't afford to stay in their house.
They can't afford
pay
to
for groceries, pay medical bills. There's a lot of people in the Northeast and middle class America that are house poor as shit, and they don't know what they're gonna do. Because they can't go back to work. They don't have another way to come up with money. And so when those things happen and AI and all these other stuff and, the new digital asset opportunity that exists, I think we have to really reconsider how we're thinking about retirement, how we're thinking about moving forward, and how we're thinking about building wealth. Victor says, not risky for us because we see it in the charts. Absolutely.
I got a comment here from Kyle Butler that's half Zen. He says, the real question the starting entrepreneur needs to ask themselves is the journey, even if it fails, will they take the growth and learning? And I think this is, Jacki, kind of what you're getting at is there's a lot of people forced into entrepreneurship that didn't make the decision. And at least in America, I believe, well, you do make the decision. It's just an informed one or an uninformed one. And therefore, that now paints the picture of there's so much risk because I stepped into entrepreneurship and I wasn't ready for it. I just took it. And it's like, yep, that feels pretty risky. That's not what I would do. In fact, when I was hard up, I went and got a job because it was it was more predictable than my other outcome. Then I learned and I read and I studied, and then I entered entrepreneurship, and I still have a lot to learn. He goes on to say, I agree with Jacki's sentiment. The real deal is the willingness to become the 5% that make it, that take the risk of your family, friends, and even your own mind. Is this the right path, or have I risked it all in vain? And I think this points to the idea of glamorizing. I never want to glamorize entrepreneurship. To me, it's a scrappy, gritty, ugly, difficult, challenging world where every day I have types of anxiety, but it still is smaller than the anxiety and fears I had as a W-2. Always. Now, that's me, and that's my wiring, and I don't want to project that into anybody. So you're right. We do glamorize it way too much, and that's a very healthy call-out. People need to say, this sucks. And then he goes on to say, the journey is the answer. What are you willing to give up for the honor of the journey?
Well, let's
And
flip this.
Yeah,
real
please.
quick. Just for sake of argument here.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm like, I want to be in the top 5% of trophy wives. I want to be the trophy wife that's with the richest guy. I want, I don't want like 95% of these women marry for money and they don't get their own Lambo. They don't get their own Benz, whatever. I mean, so couldn't that just be another, like, there's 5%, top 5% of anything, there's top 5% W-2 earners that are sitting on, I make $1.3 million a year salary or whatever, working for a certain company or doing a certain thing.
Keep going.
But I'm just saying you can be, I think this is like the glamorization of the entrepreneur path that, even for those ladies out there trying to be the trophy wives, that can be a gritty, challenging.
It's an ugly path, girlfriend. Well, and here's the thing though, like we have to strike a balance between inspiring people to do something. I think entrepreneurship is a noble calling. I believe it's a calling, and I don't believe everyone is called to it. And
Any calling is noble.
I think sure. Yeah. Great call. Anything someone is walking out that is sourced from a sense of calling, I believe is noble. So I would agree with that. But you're right. Like top 5% of anything is ugly, whether it's OnlyFans or what. People have paid some dues that I would not pay to get into some of these places. But you raise a killer point, and this is something I want to end with because we're over on time, and this has been a rich conversation. I think everyone can agree, including the comments. I want to hear from you guys the best resource, voice, or life-changing book about money. Because, Jacki, what you're getting at is you can be wealthy and be W-2. You can be rich and not be driving a Lambo. You can be secure and stable and not sell your soul. And a book that showed me this was The Millionaire Next Door. Have you all read it? Fantastic book. And just to pop, I always give this nugget, and the book is page by page full of nuggets like this that are statistics, because these were statisticians who wrote this book. They were trying to pull ultra high net worth individuals, and they had massive revelations about wealth. For example, which career in America has the highest proportion of millionaires? Just wild guesses, real quick, round robin.
Entrepreneurs.
Vending machine owner.
It's a good guess. Jarrett?
Laundromat.
No, it's truck drivers.
Well, that'll be gone soon.
Maybe, yes, because of automated and all this stuff.
But hey, that will be gone soon. But sign up for your W-2s, right, Jacki?
Yeah.
No, I come from a family of truck drivers. I mean, yeah.
But the lifestyle, the unseen lifestyle, leads to that sort of thing. This book is full of stuff like that. Round robin, what's been the most influential person, book, or resource for you all three of you, for wealth? Aussie, let's just go clockwise.
I'm going to say not Atomic Habits. It's High Performance Habits by Brendon Burchard. I've been listening to that on audiobook, and it has been revolutionizing how I'm not only thinking about money, but how I'm thinking about habits and how I approach everything. It's actually driving a lot of the decisions that I'm making right now, even though it's not directly about money.
All right, Jacki.
Well, I'm going to use this as a shameless plug for my current employer, Rick Edelman. Honestly, I set out a goal this year to learn about the world of money, about how money flows and everything. And Rick was on the radio for over 30 years. He's a personal finance leader and voice, and he runs a daily podcast called The Truth About Your Future. And I highly recommend it to anyone. It's on YouTube and all the regular channels. But it broke down a lot of my He breaks down a lot of my misconceptions that I previously held about money and the world, probably in general.
Wow. Okay.
And now I work for him, which is amazing.
Boom. Jarrett, what do you got?
It would be the guy who's kind of like my mentor. I've written about him. I won't use his name because that's just not how he's not on the grid in many ways. But he's financially free, surfs every day in Mexico, and he financially free at like late 20s, early 30s. And he just really broke down what wealth actually looks like. And it's not a Lamborghini. It's board shorts. It's time freedom. It's finding peace and happiness, and it's making sure you're eating good food every day. And I know this all sounds really earthy, crunchy, and hippie and zen, but like,
that's Jacki's love language right there. You're talking Jacki's love language. She's like, hook me up with a bro. Like, what is going on?
She's one kombucha away from flying to Cabo. So
we all should be one kombucha away from flying to Cabo. Like, really.
No, but he and I've written about him on my Medium in the 7 Steps to Wealth. I talk about him, and just when you meet someone, so my advice to be for anybody if they want to listen would be to find someone who's financially free. And when you talk to that person, they have a different way of understanding the world. And he's one of the only people I know. Every time he goes in the supermarket, he grabs the coupons, and he doesn't need to, but he knows the value of money. Whereas my brokey friends, they're the ones who'll go to the bar and spend $50 over on their credit card, or even on their debt. They'll spend over on their debit card so they get the penalty because they're like, oh, whatever. And there's just 2 different ways of looking at money. And until I met him, I didn't fully understand what wealth was.
It's just $5 1,000 times. It's $5.
Exactly. It's just $5. So anyway, I'd say
I love this. We didn't even talk about the definition of wealth. I think for another show, we need to get crypto in here eventually, but for another show, I would love to hear from you guys on the definition of wealth, because Jarrett, you just reframed the whole conversation, because this person's definition of wealth was well-being, which is the actual etymology of the word. And we've been talking a lot about money. And so like the conversation should get expansive. This was Rich. Aussie, final thoughts?
Thank you, everybody, for watching. We need to snap a really cool final screen cap. And
ready? 3, 2, 1.
You guys are on crack.
I was literally looking if I had like cash around me. I was like, where is it?
She was looking for her lapdog.
There's no chance. I want to thank everybody that's been in the comments today. You guys really made this show what it was, and
good stuff.
We look forward to seeing you guys next week at
Can't wait for my
4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
And subscribe at Not Crypto Bros. Everyone have a great day.